part of it's allowing them to talk and allowing them to share what they've experienced, because they bottle it up, because you're not going to tell your parents or your wife what you did. Mm-hmm. Because I know one person where the wife bugged him, tell me, tell me, tell me. So he told her, and she like, how could you do that? Yeah. And then he committed suicide within a year, because it just increased his guilt. So if he's with peers that understand that, and then he can work it out and vent and let it go to some degree, and then learn to deal with it. Because, you know, there's breathing techniques, there's meditation, which works much better than medication. I mean, medication has its place when, you know, you're at the spot where you're so stressed out and you need it to help you get through it. But that doesn't cure the problem unless you work at it and deal with it, and then learn to deal with it on your own. Because what if you're out in the street one day and you have no medication? Mm-hmm. And then you see a child that looked like some child that got blown up next to you. Mm-hmm. And then you start to lose it. You know, I mean, when I walk the trail, and every day when I'm in Florida and I walk with a billboard, I meet people and they all have a story. Yeah. And with all the stories I hear, you know, you walk down the street and you think this person is so far removed from that, and you talk to them and they say, oh, my uncle, that happened to. Or, you know, my brother came home and he woke up in the middle of the night and we had to call the police because he didn't know where he was, and now they put him in prison. Mm-hmm. So they all have a horror story. So it's, I know that we have to change our mind and not bury it and let it go so that something gets done about it. And I've learned working with congressmen that they don't do anything unless they're told. The Congress, yeah, you have to really speak with them or write to them or email them or petition them in some way. If you don't do that, if you don't tell them, they don't know, or they're going to do what's easy for them, which I understand. They have a job, they want to keep it, and they do that. And if you speak to them and tell them, this is what I want you to do, you're working for me, then they do it. I mean, it's a simple thing. I never got involved in politics till a couple of years ago. When I went in a congressman's office for the first time, I was scared. He has 13, 20-year-olds running his office, and he's on the phone to where his next fundraiser is to tell the people what they want to hear, so that he keeps his face in the profile and gets money and votes so he can keep working. Now, you lived part of the time in Florida? Right. I moved down to Florida to take care of my father, who was dying, and I figured I was kind of torn, because I like doing what I'm doing to help, but I figured I could do what I'm doing down there, so that's why I got involved with congressmen down in Florida. But I figured if I couldn't take care of my own father, how could I say, I'm going to take care of these kids? Mm-hmm. You know, what kind of hypocrite am I, and how am I showing up? Because if I say all these nice things and say these things that I'm going to help, but I can't do it with my own family, my word means nothing. You seem to have a great deal of compassion. And do you know how that evolved in you? I'm a child of a dysfunctional World War II home. So I was raised by a man who saw the world as a horrible place to live. And so that's where a lot of my anger came from, and that's where my compassion came from, because every guy that comes home from the war, he affects 25 to 30 people. Really? A man that commits suicide, his kids have an 85% chance of committing suicide. Every guy that comes home, he doesn't kill himself, but he self-medicates himself or drinks, as my father did. You know, what chance do they have, because they're brought up in a dysfunctional home? And children have it the hardest, because what happens, my father knew right from wrong. He would say what not to do, but he would do it. Mm-hmm. Don't drink and don't do this, and, you know, don't beat people and don't be mean, but he did it. Mm-hmm. And he knew right from wrong, but he expected me to be his hero. I wanted him to be mine. Yeah, well, that's a male thing, isn't it? I mean, it's very, very difficult. Yeah. And a lot of men are never trained really how to express their emotions, or to, you know, it's do as I say, not as I do. You know, I think we might be changing a little bit in our society. There might be hope for the next generations to come, maybe for our children or our grandchildren at some point. But to develop a sense of really needing or wanting to
show your feelings toward other people is a great evolution, I think. I mean, that's how I perceive it. To get the military now to take this on as a way of dealing with young people, young men and women now. You know, we have many women doing
because and the women have it the worst.
because they have kids. This poor woman is going to get court-martialed because she refused to go on a deployment. I mean, I'm sure they're trying to deal with it, but it's very, very serious. Or the story recently of the young man whose wife gave birth to a very premature baby, and it took a lot of letters to the editor and a lot of letters to congresspeople to get him a chance to come home just to see the baby in case it might not survive. There are a lot of harsh things that are done to people because of wars and because of military service. I don't know how you shake up the world. Now, you took your shoes off and went on walks. And tell me, the Appalachian Trail, you walked the whole distance of that?
Yeah, I walked it 2,174 miles.
Oh my
and because of that, I had an informal hearing in Congress because they heard about me and they wanted to see me. You know, and I got to speak before a panel.
And did that have any effect?
Everything has an effect. You know, I get impatient. I want it all to happen today.
Immediately.
I wanted legislation. I want it passed, and I want it done today, because every day that goes by is another 18 commit suicide. And
is it that many?
Yeah, and every day that goes by, you know, another child in the family is raised by an abusive guy, and his father is showing his feelings. He's showing his feelings of anger and fear and rage. And that's what these kids grow up with.
So you walk, how many miles? Over 2,000. Over 2,000 miles. You get some coverage? Was there press?
I got some, and what happened was, you know, for me, like I said, I was doing penance, you know, and then, you know, it evolved. And what's going to happen this spring, I plan to walk across the country, and I have support. And I'll have somebody follow me so that I can, you know, make it to interviews and TV coverage, because I missed some international TV coverage because I couldn't be at a certain place at a certain time.
You have to be followed.
Right, or they couldn't get a hold of me, and if you don't see them today, they forget about you tomorrow. And, you know, I could see where it got some attention, and I figure, you know, doing this, if I can capture the public's imagination and get them on board that, you know, we have to do something different. We have to look at this different. And it's not, I'm not blaming our congressmen. I'm not blaming our government. I blame myself, because I am my government. If I do nothing, what can I expect?
If you had the opportunity to discuss something with the president, who's an open-minded man, what would you say to him?
Well, like I said, I want the grieving for them, which would be a 2-hour class while they're in boot camp.
Do you think they could actually call it something like that?
They could call it whatever they want, as long as it serves a purpose. They could give it any kind of macho name so it doesn't sound so bad, it doesn't sound floofy. You know, emotional encounters or whatever, anything. You know, something to expect, you know, prepared. Because then they'd be better soldiers. If we're going to send them to kill, let's let them be prepared so they can function well. How can you function when you have these nightmares, or you're not prepared and you're starting to break up?
Well, also, since it really is not a great big video game that you're in.
Right.
It's a real life situation if you have to kill or be killed.
Right.
All right, so you would talk to the president about that, about having a presentation before. Then what else?
And then I would have them talk about having a mandatory program for all of them when they get out. And that would be like, how I envision it, is that you could take a group of 100 to 125 men at a clip and let them talk, and let them share or let them write it out so they can let out these things, and then people that really need intensive work, that they'd be able to see them and deal with them, but give them tools, you know, like breathing and meditation. And then there's a lot of other alternative methods they're working on where they tap in pressure points and, you know, other things other than medication. Medication has its place when, you know, like I said, when a guy is really out of control. But there was a man that lived with me that had committed suicide. He would get bags like this in the mail full of medication. His room, when he left, was a nest this thick with pills on his room. And he would be like out of his mind, but he wasn't a problem to anybody.
Yeah, it was only a problem to himself.
Right, so, and then when he killed himself, he left 3 children. and a wife.
That's very sad.
And
Very
how is
sad.
that a way to remember your father?
No, no, it's very, very sad. It's really
So
terrible.